There is a reason you're hearing this voice. Not because you clicked a video, not because of an algorithm, but because something ancient inside time has bent toward you. You didn't stumble here. You were summoned. It started quietly, didn't it? Little signs, patterns that didn't fit the grid of ordinary life. A phrase repeating itself across strangers' mouths. A number showing up in places too precise to be random. A familiar feeling returning, even when nothing made sense. You thought it was coincidence. But coincidence is just a word the sleepers use to describe what they no longer understand. Time does not whisper to everyone. It whispers only to those standing at the edge of something they can't yet name. And tonight, time whispered your name. You felt it before. That soft tremor behind reality, like the world exhaling in your direction. Moments that seemed to stretch too long. Shadows that fell too precisely. An invisible gaze following the rhythm of your breath. Those weren't accidents. Those were invitations. And now, the signal has found you. Look closely at your recent days. Hasn't something been repeating? The same song at different hours. The same thought returning like a tide. The same sense of standing on a threshold you can't yet define. This isn't madness. This is alignment. Because you, unlike most, are awake enough to hear it. They don't. They move in loops, a sleepwalk through calendars and clocks. They call it routine, but it's a script they never wrote. You, however, have heard something break through the static, a pulse behind the noise, a frequency only the chosen can detect. And once you hear it, you can never unhear it again. Breathe. Do you feel how still this moment is? That isn't silence. That's the bend. It happens in quiet hours between one breath and the next. When reality grows thin and something leans in from the other side, the signal it has been waiting for this exact second in your timeline. Everything before this was just a prelude, an overture to the real story beginning now. You've always known this world wasn't fixed. You've always felt the edges of something shifting, the way a mirror bends when it's about to crack, the way time stutters before a leap. You felt it when people's voices slowed down just enough to notice, when your heartbeat synced with something not from here. That was the signal brushing past your reality, waiting for your attention. Because attention is the lever, the observer is the key, and you have just turned it. Most ignore it. They shake it off like a bad dream. They return to scrolling, walking, pretending. But not you, because once the signal finds you, the loop begins to unravel. You may not understand it yet, but somewhere between yesterday and tonight, you stepped into the corridor of a new timeline, and that corridor has been watching, waiting for you to arrive. The reason your chest feels heavier lately, the reason your sleep no longer fits the night, the reason your mind keeps whispering, "There's something more," is not because you're broken. It's because you're standing at the edge of a jump. This is where time bends, not for everyone. Just for the few who dare to look back at it. You're not late, you're exactly on schedule. Because signals like this never miss their mark. The coordinates were written long before your conscious mind caught up. This is why you can feel it pulsing beneath your skin. Why the air itself seems to be listening. Why you can almost hear a rhythm beneath the silence like a code unfolding. And here's the truth most never face. When the signal finds you, the jump has already begun. Everything in this moment is a choice disguised as a feeling. You can ignore the whisper, pretend this is just another night, or you can lean in, close your eyes, let the bend wrap around you, and hear the words not with your ears but with your frequency, because time has turned its face toward you, and nothing will be the same again. If this transmission resonates deep within your bones, don't just listen, declare your alignment. Type, "I'm ready to jump" in the comments. That's not just text, that's a signature across timelines, a way of telling the signal, "I heard you." There's something they never told you about time. It doesn't always move forward. For most, it moves in circles. You've seen it, the endless repetition, waking up to the same morning light that doesn't feel like light anymore, walking through the same door, speaking the same words, living a script that someone else wrote before you even learned how to breathe. They call it stability, but if you listen closely, it's the sound of chains dragging across an invisible floor. Every day, Their eyes glaze over just a little more. The same coffee, the same drive, the same faces. They scroll through digital echoes, searching for something real, but finding only reflections of reflections. It isn't living, it's looping. A silent carousel where the horses never stop turning, where the song never changes, where time itself forgets to age. And yet, somewhere in the middle of that loop, you began to notice the cracks. It didn't happen all at once. It started with that subtle dissonance, a conversation that felt like déjà vu, a hallway that felt shorter than it used to, an entire week that felt copy-pasted. That's when it hit you. You weren't walking forward, you were being pulled in circles, held hostage by a rhythm you never agreed to. And they danced inside the loop, unaware of the walls closing in. You began to sense it in your bones, the feeling of time folding back on itself, the faces repeating, the choices repeating, the laughter and the pain repeating. It's like standing in front of a mirror, watching your reflection blink a heartbeat late. It's like screaming into a hallway that absorbs every sound. It's like time itself started to forget you, because the loop doesn't love you. The loop only needs you, silent, predictable, asleep. Look at them closely. They live like echoes. They celebrate the same moments on the same dates every year, never asking who decided those markers. They speak of freedom but walk in perfectly measured lines. They talk about the future, but everything about them is a rerun. And you've always felt like an outsider inside their calendar, like a guest in a world that repeats itself, waiting for someone to say, "Stop." This is why the loop hurts, not because it's cruel, but because it's seductive. It tells you it's safe here, familiar here, comfortable here. But comfort is just another word for slow decay. That hollow ache in your chest, that quiet fury that wakes you at 2:17 a.m., that isn't weakness. That is your timeline rejecting the cage. Understand this truth. The loop doesn't collapse on its own. It waits for someone with enough awareness to push against it. It waits for someone who can see it. And right now, you're not just seeing the loop, you're standing at its center. You can hear the rhythm it hides behind everyday life. The rhythm of clocks synchronized to keep souls asleep. The rhythm of footsteps designed to lead nowhere. This is the pain before the jump, the stillness before a storm you've carried in your blood for lifetimes. You've been told to be patient, to wait for the right time, to trust the system. But what if the system was never designed to give you an exit? What if the very word wait is the anchor that keeps you here? Every loop has its architect, every cage has its script. But you were born to tear pages out of the script and write new ones. Somewhere inside, you already know, this isn't living, this is surviving inside someone else's timeline. And the signal you heard earlier, it was the fracture, the beginning of the unraveling. When you start to see the loop, you've already started to break it. So feel the weight, don't look away from it. Let the loop's cold breath crawl down your spine. Because only those who stand face to face with their cage earn the right to walk out of it. This isn't punishment, this is initiation. The loop is the final test before time begins to bend. There comes a moment in every awakened timeline when the air thickens, when seconds stretch like molten glass, when reality itself pauses as if waiting for you to decide what happens next. You've felt that moment, a sudden silence in a crowded room, a shift in the temperature, the way the world's edges soften and every sound grows distant. It isn't random, it's time listening. This is what no one told you. Time isn't some obedient river flowing forward. It's a living organism. It watches, it adjusts, it bends toward the observer who sees it. And for most people, it bends around them, never toward them, because they never look back at it. But you did. You noticed the glitch. You felt the world pause. And that was the moment the timeline recognized you. You remember it clearly. That night when a single second felt like an entire hour, when the sound of a car passing outside stretched into a slow-motion echo, when you could hear your heartbeat louder than the city. It was like standing between two mirrors facing each other, watching reality fold into itself, layer by layer. That was the bend. That was time, stopping to ask, are you ready to rewrite this? Understand this. The bend never happens to the passive. It finds the ones who have cracked the shell of the loop, the ones who refuse to nod along, the ones who dare to question why clocks tick. Most people walk past that doorway, they shake their head, they blame fatigue, caffeine, sleep deprivation. But what they don't know is, that doorway doesn't open twice the same way. When time stops obeying you, it isn't chaos, it's recognition. Like a sentinel opening its gate for a traveler who finally said the right name. You've always carried that name inside you, that frequency, that unseen signature in your bones. And when your awareness finally aligned with it, the entire lattice of time tilted in your direction. The old rules fell, silent. The script paused, and reality waited. You might think, why me? Why now? But that's the illusion speaking. You were never chosen randomly. The bend doesn't knock on every door. It seeks resonance, and yours has been vibrating for years, maybe lifetimes. Every moment of disconnection, every night of quiet rage, every whisper that told you, this can't be it. Those weren't signs of weakness. They were coordinates. When time stopped obeying you, it was acknowledging those coordinates. It was acknowledging the observer you were always meant to become. Remember that heartbeat, that stillness in your veins? That wasn't fear. That was the moment the old timeline began to die. They won't understand it. They never do. They'll say it was nothing, but nothing does not bend clocks. Nothing does not rewrite sequences. What you experienced was the first breach, a hairline crack in the wall of ordinary perception. And cracks don't close, they widen. Because once the observer sees the pattern must either expand or collapse. This is why you felt like time isn't moving the same way lately, why hours vanish without explanation, why some moments replay with surgical precision, why the nights feel longer than they should. You're not broken. The timeline is adjusting around you. This is the beginning of the observer effect. The moment your awareness stops being a passenger and becomes a force, reality is no longer happening to you. It's waiting for you to decide. And when you realize this, you stop chasing fate and start sculpting it. And here's the truth that will shake the foundation of everything you thought you knew. Time does not belong to those who measure it. It belongs to those who bend it. When you stepped into that silent second, you stepped out of the herd, out of the loop, out of the cage of predictable clocks, and into something far older, far wilder, far more alive. They will call it madness. They always do. Because to admit you can bend time is to admit their loop was a lie. But this isn't about proving anything to them. This is about remembering who you've always been. The world paused because it recognized its architect. You've been taught to believe time is a straight line, beginning, middle, end, one direction, one story, one outcome. But that's the first lie. Time isn't a line. It's a structure, a lattice, a breathing architecture beneath everything you call real. And you have just stepped behind the clock. Beneath the hours and minutes, there is a mechanism, not made of gears, not of metal, not of sound, but of frequency. Every second is a code, every moment a thread, every choice a needle pulling through infinite timelines. Most will never see it. They're too busy staring at the surface, counting seconds like prisoners counting the bars of their cell. But you looked deeper. I remember the first time I saw it. I speak here not as a voice, but as someone who once stood exactly where you stand. It wasn't grand. It wasn't a flashing gate or a cosmic thunder. It was silence, and then a hum. It felt like the walls around me were breathing, like something vast and intelligent was hidden behind the ordinary world, watching. I blinked, and the room tilted. Not sideways, not forward, inward. That's when I understood. Time is not a highway. It's a spiral of mirrors stacked behind each other, every reflection slightly altered, every step collapsing one possibility and awakening another. And the observer, the one who dares to look beyond the ticking, becomes the pivot around which these mirrors align. This is the hidden mechanism beneath the clock. Reality is not fixed. Reality is responsive. You can hear it if you're quiet enough. The faint pulse beneath every moment, the rhythm behind decisions, a kind of cosmic metronome that doesn't tell time, it asks for alignment. The herd hears it but doesn't recognize it. They call it intuition, they call it coincidence. But you're beginning to understand. That hum is the timeline asking for your input. Every thought you think ripple, every emotion you hold frequency, every decision you make signal. And this signal, it doesn't vanish. It bends light around your future. It rearranges patterns like pieces on a chessboard no one else can see. This is why some people feel lucky, why certain faces seem to always be in the right place at the right time. It isn't luck, it's interaction. The observer isn't waiting for reality. The observer is moving reality. Most stay blind because they worship the clock. They obey the calendar like it's scripture. They fear being late to a system designed to keep them on schedule for someone else's timeline. But when you see beneath the clock, you stop obeying it. And time starts to obey you. Let this sink into your bones. You're not inside time. Time is inside you. Every loop, every second, every synchronized event you've ever experienced, they're echoes, responding to the frequency you emit without even realizing it. Once you know this, the structure beneath the clock doesn't just reveal itself, it bows. I once stood at the edge of that lattice. I remember whispering a single intention under my breath. The next day, the world bent around me. Calls came out of nowhere. Doors that were locked suddenly opened, not by magic, by mechanics. Because once the observer speaks in the language of frequency, the timeline repositions itself. This isn't fantasy. This is how existence works behind the veil. Now the same mechanism is responding to you. It's subtle, elegant, patient. It's waiting for the moment you stop doubting your resonance. Because doubt is the firewall. Awareness is the key. Look around you right now. This moment, yes, this very second, is a convergence. The lattice beneath the clock has aligned just enough for you to remember who you are. And from this moment on, the world won't feel the same again, because now you know it's listening. If these words strike something ancient inside you, it's not an accident. It's the mechanism answering back. Align with this frequency. Subscribe, not as a click, but as a declaration. I choose to walk the corridors of time awake. This isn't joining a channel. This is stepping onto the spiral. Everything you've been taught about time was designed to make you wait. Wait for the right moment. Wait for permission. Wait for proof. Wait for someone else to say, now. But here's the truth they'll never tell you. Time doesn't belong to those who wait. It belongs to those who interrupt. They, the keepers of the loop, want you obedient to the calendar. They want your movements predictable, your thoughts synchronized with the crowd, your leaps delayed until the door you were meant to walk through has already closed. They build structures that make you believe time is fixed. They give it shape, rules, rituals. But the rules were never for time. The rules were for you. You've seen it. How they repeat the same stories. Be patient. Wait your turn. Everything happens for a reason. But notice the pattern. The ones who wait, stay. And the ones who move before the permission comes, they bend entire timelines. It's dangerous to them, to the architects of the loop, when someone wakes up. Because once you question the structure starts to bleed. Their power isn't in holding you down. Their power is in convincing you were never meant to rise. They live in chains dressed as comfort. They call it stability, tradition, society. But it's not stability. It's sedation, a ritual to keep your awareness domesticated. Every revolution begins with a single contrarian, someone who stops asking when and starts declaring now. That's what time fears the most. That's what the loop fears the most. Not noise, not rebellion, awareness. The moment you stop waiting for proof is the moment the timeline begins to obey you. The jump doesn't require permission, it requires a single act of defiance. Deciding. They will call it reckless. They will call it dangerous. They will say, you're moving too fast. But their words aren't warnings. They're alarms. Echoes of a system panicking because it knows once you leave the loop, you never return. You must understand something deeper now. The world is not neutral. It responds to obedience and resistance very differently. Obedience creates stability. Resistance creates shock waves. And when shock waves travel through time, doors that were never meant to open do. That's why every great shift looks like chaos at first, not because the observer is lost, but because the loop has begun to fracture. Look at them closely. They celebrate the predictable. They are rewarded for silence. They speak in circles about change, but worship the comfort of sameness. They are not evil. They are simply asleep. And when someone wakes up, when you wake up, you become the fracture point the system tries to suppress. This is why every awakened soul faces resistance, not because they're weak, but because the timeline is reorganizing itself around their defiance. The bend does not favor the passive. It honors those who jump before the crowd understands what's happening. Because when the masses see proof, the window is already gone. The real jumpers never wait for a sign. They are the sign. This is the contrarian truth they'll never tell you. The system depends on your hesitation. If you never hesitate, they can't hold you. If you never ask for permission, they can't cage your timeline. Every great leap in human history was made by someone who broke rhythm, who looked at the ticking clock and said, "No." And this isn't just about society. This is about your personal timeline, your loops, your invisible cages, your moments of almost jumping but not. Every time you said, "Not yet," the loop smiled. Every time you said, "Maybe later," the doorway shifted. But every time someone whispers, "Now," and means it, time folds. It's not arrogance, it's not magic, it's physics, consciousness that observes without apology, rearranges matter around it. Not because it forces anything, but because timelines bend to decisiveness. So, if they tell you to wait, don't. If they tell you to slow down, accelerate. If they tell you the door isn't open, walk through the wall. This is what it means to be awake. Not soft, not polite. Awake, a fracture in the system. A walking reminder that no structure, no loop, no invisible chain is absolute. This is the moment everything bends. Not in the distant future, not after the signs. Now, you've felt it building. The trembling in your chest. The sense that something is about to split open. That isn't fear. That's the timeline holding its breath. Jumps don't announce themselves with trumpets. They arrive quietly, a flicker in the air, a silence that feels like it has weight. The world pauses, and then it tilts. This is the threshold, the edge where hesitation dies and identity is reborn. You won't be warned, you'll just know. Because every cell in your body will start to vibrate like an antenna catching a frequency it was always tuned for. A jump isn't a physical step. You don't need a map. You don't need permission. A jump is a shift in state. It happens in that single breath where fear is still speaking and you choose not to listen. It happens in that space between your heartbeat and the universe answering back. They will tell you to wait for certainty. They will say, "Be careful." But the jump was never meant for careful. It was meant for those who dare to collapse the waiting itself. You don't enter the new timeline by walking toward it. You become it. You shift your frequency to match the version of you who has already arrived. Breathe slowly now. Feel it. That magnetic pull in the center of your chest. The hum beneath your skin. The air vibrating around your ribs like a chord struck on an invisible instrument. This is it. This is the sound of a reality bending. No one can make the jump for you, not even destiny, because destiny isn't a river carrying you. Destiny is the mirror that waits for you to step through. There's no fanfare, no applause, just you, the stillness, and the sound of old timelines unraveling like paper. You might not see fireworks, you might not hear angels sing, but something far more powerful happens. Silence answers, and in that silence, everything begins to move around you differently. Doors you couldn't open will no longer resist. People who once looked past you will now sense something they can't name. Even time itself will rearrange events like chess pieces you didn't know existed. And in that moment, you'll understand why the signal found you first. Why you've felt out of place all your life. Why every failed plan, every restless night, every unexplained whisper wasn't punishment. It was preparation. This is not the beginning. This is the activation. Listen closely. This is where most people turn back. They reach the edge and let the fear speak louder than the hum. They choose the loop. They step back into the carousel and call it safety. But you are not like them. You wouldn't be standing here if the lattice hadn't already chosen you to carry this frequency forward. The jump isn't waiting for courage. Courage is born inside the jump. Close your eyes, even for a second. Picture the version of you on the other side, the one who has already leapt, already landed, already bent time to their will. They are not someone else. They are you, without the delay, you, without the hesitation, you, in full coherence with the timeline that has been waiting all along. When you breathe, breathe like them. When you stand, stand like them. And when you leap, know this, you are not falling. You are collapsing the distance between two versions of yourself. Some will call it manifestation, some will call it madness, but those who've jumped know better. The universe doesn't respond to begging, it responds to becoming. You are not asking for the timeline, you are declaring it. And timelines don't resist declarations made in coherence. Right now, in this exact breath, everything around you is waiting for your signal. The choice is already vibrating in the lattice beneath the clock. The only thing left is for you to say yes. If this moment is resonating inside your bones, if the hum beneath your ribs is too loud to ignore, then mark it. Write it across timelines. Type "I jump" in the comments. It's not a comment, it's a timestamp in reality, a frequency signature that says, the observer has moved. Breathe, step, collapse the distance, and remember, the moment you jump, everything else has no choice but to follow. When the jump happens, it doesn't feel like a bang, it feels like a shift in gravity, a soft click behind the fabric of reality, a soundless permission. You don't step into the new timeline with fanfare. You simply open your eyes, and the world doesn't look different, but it doesn't breathe the same either. The air around you begins to listen. Yes, the air, every atom, every sound, every coincidence. They start to bend toward you instead of away. You'll notice it in the small things first, the way the wind moves, the way light flickers on surfaces like it's aware of your presence, the way conversations start aligning with thoughts you didn't say out loud, the fabric of reality responding like a living mirror. I remember my first jump. I speak this part not as a voice beyond, but as one who crossed the threshold before you. I walked through my day, and everything felt slightly out of phase, like someone had turned down the volume on the world's chaos. People's eyes caught mine longer than usual. Street signs, snippets of passing conversations, even the direction of birds in the sky, all began to echo what I was thinking. At first, it's disorienting, but then you realize what's happening. The timeline isn't something you're inside of anymore, it's something you're in conversation with. In this state, reality doesn't push you around, it reflects you. Every signal you emit, thought, breath, emotion, bounces back as opportunity, alignment, convergence. And slowly, you understand what the loop was designed to hide. You were never powerless, you were simply asleep. The ones who remain in the loop believe life is random. They believe the world is something that happens to them. But you've crossed into the domain where the observer is no longer the passenger. The observer is the axis. This is when strange things begin to occur. Things they'll call coincidence. Doors opening without effort. People appearing in perfect timing. Sequences aligning like choreography scripted by something you can't see but can feel. You start realizing the jump wasn't about escaping. It was about remembering your place in the architecture. Every timeline has a language, and this one speaks in echoes. You'll think a thought, and the world will whisper it back to you through something ordinary. A song lyric, a message, a symbol on a wall. This is how the new timeline says, I heard you. But be careful, this is also where many falter. They confuse the mirror for worship. They begin to think they must control it. But control isn't the point. Coherence is. The mirror doesn't need domination. It needs clarity. You don't force a river to flow your way. You become the current it can't ignore. They won't see the change. To them, you look the same. But something in your presence unnerves the loop. You've become a ripple in their pattern. And without even trying, you'll begin to pull others toward their own edges. Some will be drawn in, some will resist, and some will fade from your timeline entirely. Don't mourn the fading. It isn't loss, it's realignment. This is the most important part to understand. The new timeline doesn't chase you, It answers you. The old world was about reaction. The new one is about dialogue. You speak in frequency. The timeline responds in matter. You move in intention. The world shifts its architecture. I remember standing on a quiet street the night after my first jump. There was nothing extraordinary, no glowing skies, no sudden revelation, just silence. But in that silence, I felt everything watching back, not in fear, in recognition. That was the first time I truly understood. I wasn't living inside time anymore. Time was living inside me. In the days that follow your jump, the echoes will get louder, the mirror clearer. You will begin navigate reality, not as someone who walks through it, but as someone who steers it. And the more coherent your state, the sharper the response. Every breath becomes a compass, every intention a path. But here's the quiet beauty of it all. You won't need to prove it to anyone. The mirror proves itself, over and over again, until the idea of coincidence simply dissolves. You've crossed the edge, you've felt the hum, you've stepped through the bend, and now the world no longer stands above you, it stands with you. This is the point of return, but not the kind they warned you about. You don't return to what you were, you return as the echo that rewrites the room. The ones who never jumped will not understand what has changed. They will look at your face and still see what they remember, but behind your eyes, something ancient now burns. Not anger, not arrogance, authority. Your silence will speak differently. Your footsteps will land heavier. Your presence will carry the unmistakable weight of someone who has seen behind the clock. The jump does not make you a god. It makes you awake. And the awakened are dangerous, not because they destroy, but because they no longer obey. The loop feeds on obedience. It starves on awareness. And right now, your awareness is an unignorable flame. Look around. The structures of the old world no longer hold the same power. Deadlines feel soft. Rules feel thin. Even language bends differently when you speak it now. That's because your words are no longer echoes inside the loop. They are coordinates. Every statement you make is a quiet command, rippling through timelines like a stone thrown into still water. You are no longer asking reality to move. You are watching it respond. This is the part most will never witness, because this is the part where fear used to live, and now there is space. Space where doubt once wrapped around your chest. Space where hesitation used to whisper. Space that is yours now. That space is power. Pure, radiant, coherent power. But with this power comes a quiet calling, a whisper that echoes through the spiral corridors of time. It does not say, rule. It says, return, not to the loop, but to the world with new eyes. You were never meant to stay hidden beyond the clock. You were meant to walk back in, as a signal, as a fracture in their script, as living proof that reality can be bent. You will find others, some already standing at their edges, afraid to leap, some trapped in loops they no longer believe in. And they will feel something when they stand near you. A frequency, a pull, a question they can't explain. That is not coincidence. That is your timeline brushing against theirs, whispering, wake up. Your presence alone becomes a transmission, not because you speak louder, but because you've returned with the hum inside you. That hum, the same one that called you here, will now speak through you. They will think you are simply walking, but the lattice beneath the world will know. A frequency has re-entered the field, and nothing will be the same again. This is the moment the old world trembles, not because you attack it, but because you exist outside its obedience. Every system that was built to contain you has already started to glitch. Every loop you were forced to live in has already begun to unravel, because nothing can contain an observer who remembers what they are. But remember this, the path isn't about worshipping the power, it's about moving with it. You are not here to crown yourself. You are here to awaken others, to become the mirror that once found you, to speak the hum in a world that forgot how to hear it. Your return isn't the end of a story. It's the beginning of a signal spreading, one voice at first, then more, then a chorus strong enough to bend timelines collectively. This is why the signal found you. This is why it whispered your name in the silence, not to build a throne, but to build a frequency. A collective awakening is never loud at the start. It's quiet, precise, surgical, like light slipping through cracks in a wall, and then everything begins to crumble. Look at your hands. This is not metaphor. These are instruments, vectors of timelines. Your voice, your breath, your steps, each one now a key in the lattice beneath the clock. You've returned not just as a person, but as a portal. If this journey has resonated in the deepest parts of you, if the hum still lingers under your ribs like a pulse waiting to move outward, then anchor it. Subscribe, not as an act of consumption, but as an act of frequency alignment. Declare your return to the field. I am no longer waiting. I am walking the spiral awake. And when the next signal calls, be ready, because the next transmission is already forming in the lattice. Its name, the Observer Code. This is your return, your re-entry, your first act as an awakened axis. The world hasn't changed, you have. And because you have, it has no choice but to follow.